This presentation will overview the different disability categories covered under Part B of IDEA. In order to receive special education services, students must be found eligible by meeting the requirements of one of the disability categories found in the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. This presentation overviews the criteria for each of the disability categories, as well as provides a brief description of the characteristics of each category. By the end of this presentation, you should have an increased understanding of the disability assessment process. Disabilities can sometimes be arranged by high and low incidence. High incidence means that the disability is found more frequently, and these categories combined compose more than 80% of the students with disabilities. These students can be hard to distinguish from their peers, and they may have a combination of behavioral, social, and academic challenges. The low incidence disability categories tend to be more severe, and students are more varied in their learning needs. Let's begin our discussion with students with speech and language impairments. These students may have difficulty with speech and forming sounds, or with communication on a more general level. Students with communication deficits may experience difficulties with receptive language, or their ability to understand what is said, or expressive language, their ability to form their thoughts into words. Students with speech and language difficulties can be at risk for school failure. They may experience academic problems, especially in reading, social problems, and there may be perceived behavior problems that result from their inability to express their wants and needs, or their inability to understand what is being said in the classroom. Now let's talk about the category of learning disabilities. A learning disability is a neurological disorder that results from a difference in the way a person's brain is wired. Students with learning disabilities experience difficulties with their short-term and their long-term memory. Students that qualify for special education services as having a learning disability may have difficulty reading, writing, spelling, reasoning, recalling, and/or organizing information. Typically, children with learning disabilities have average to above average IQs. They are smart children who are just experiencing difficulties in specific areas of learning. Students cannot qualify as a student with a learning disability as a result of lack of opportunity for instruction, and their learning challenges cannot be a result of being an English as a second language learner. Under IDEA, students with intellectual disabilities or cognitive impairments receive special education services as a student with mental retardation. While typically we try not to use the word retardation in society, the law still uses this language. Mental retardation is considered a developmental disability, meaning that it must manifest during the child's early years. Students in this category have low IQs, typically below 70. Along with the low IQ, the student must have difficulties in adaptive behavior. Adaptive behavior means that the student has difficulty adjusting to a new situation, taking care of their personal needs, and functioning without support. As with all disabilities, mental retardation must adversely impact a student's educational performance in order for that student to qualify for special education services. Although we do not see as much of this in early childhood, students may qualify for special education services as a student with an emotional disturbance. To be a student with an emotional disturbance, one or more of the following characteristics over a long period of time to a marked degree must be seen, and these characteristics must also adversely affect the child's educational performance. These characteristics include an inability to learn that cannot otherwise be explained, an inability to build or maintain relationships with peers and teachers, inappropriate types of behaviors or expression of feelings, a pervasive mood of unhappiness or depression, and/or physical symptoms or fears associated with personal and school problems. It is important to note that typically boys are identified as having an emotional disturbance 6 to 9 times more frequently than girls. There are 2 types of hearing loss and deafness. Hearing loss and deafness can be either acquired, meaning that the loss occurred after birth due to illness or injury, or congenital, meaning that the hearing loss or deafness was present at birth. The most common cause of acquired hearing loss is exposure to noise. Other causes can include buildup of fluid in the eardrums, ear infections, also known as otitis media, childhood diseases such as mumps, measles, or chickenpox, and head trauma. Congenital causes of hearing loss and deafness include a family history of hearing loss or deafness, infections during pregnancy such as rubella, and complications during pregnancy such as the Rh factor, maternal diabetes, or toxicity. Hearing loss or deafness does not affect a person's intellectual capacity or their ability to learn. However, children who are hard of hearing or deaf generally require some form of special education services in order to receive an adequate education. Such services may include regular speech, language, and auditory training, amplification systems, services of an interpreter for those who use sign language, favorable seating in the classroom to facilitate lip reading, and other accommodations as determined by the IEP team. Children who are hard of hearing will find it much more difficult than children who have normal hearing to learn vocabulary, grammar, word order, idiomatic expressions, and other aspects of verbal communication. Students with autism experience difficulty with 3 specific areas: social skills, communication, and behavior. Typically, students with autism experience difficulties understanding the perspectives of others. They may be nonverbal or have limited verbal skills. We often see difficulties in behavior where students may have restricted areas of interest, repetitive behaviors, or stereotyped behaviors. Children with autism often experience difficulties in handling change. The symptoms of autism typically present themselves before the age of 3. Autism is known as a spectrum disorder. This means that each child may have very different skills and abilities. One child can be high in language and low in social skills. One child might have better abilities in social skills but experience difficulties in behavior. Think of it like this picture of a graphic equalizer. Every child with autism may have different skills and different deficits. It's the combination of these abilities that we see in the student's behavior in the classroom. Autism impacts their abilities across social skills as well as academics. Developmental delay, or child with a disability, is a category for children aged 3 through 9 by federal law. States have the ability to change this category to be through age 5 or 6. To qualify as a child with a developmental delay, a child must experience significant delays in one or more of the following areas: physical development, cognitive development, communication development, social or emotional development, or adaptive behavior. And, because of this delay, they must need related services. This category is very useful in early childhood. Many times we know a child is experiencing learning difficulties, but because all learning in early childhood is so interrelated, it may be hard to qualify the child in one of the other disability categories. This developmental delay category allows us to intervene early with the students to help close the learning gap. A visual impairment is an impairment in vision that, even with correction, adversely affects a child's educational performance. This term includes both partial sight as well as blindness. An orthopedic impairment means a severe orthopedic impairment that adversely affects a child's educational performance. These impairments may be caused by a congenital anomaly, impairments caused by disease, and impairments from other causes, such as cerebral palsy or fractures and burns that cause contractures. Other health impairments are health impairments that cause limited strength, vitality, or alertness, including a heightened alertness to environmental stimuli that results in limited alertness with respect to the educational environment. This must be due to a chronic or acute health problem such as asthma, attention deficit disorder, diabetes, epilepsy, Tourette syndrome, leukemia, etc. The most important aspect of this other health impairment is not that the child has it, but that it adversely affects their educational performance. So having a health impairment does not mean a child will qualify for special education services. Again, this impairment must impact the child's educational performance. A child with multiple impairments is a child who has simultaneous impairments, such as an intellectual disability combined with blindness. This combination, which causes severe educational needs that cannot be accommodated in a special education program solely for one of the other impairments. This term, however, does not include deaf-blindness. Finally, we will discuss traumatic brain injury. A traumatic brain injury is an injury due to a head trauma from a physical force. Traumatic brain injury is the leading cause of disability and death among children. Children with traumatic brain injuries may experience energy levels that vary from day to day. Characteristics of children with traumatic brain injuries include processing and learning difficulties, physical needs, as well as social and emotional difficulties. In summary, in order to qualify for special education services, students must meet the criteria of one of the disability categories. However, meeting the criteria is not enough. First of all, the disability must impact the educational performance of the student. Secondly, the eligibility cannot be a result of learning English as a second language. And finally, eligibility cannot be a result of a lack of instruction.